There are two ways to make cars. The Chinese way, where it takes just 2 quarters from the idea for a car to it leaving the showroom, and by the next one there's already a facelift. And the Japanese way, where exactly a year passed between the first presentation, when I saw this car practically finished, and handing me the keys today for the first test drives in California. Make haste slowly, that could be the motto for Lexus, or more bluntly, haste makes waste. Working on perfecting a hybrid for 30 years could be another example, right? But it's not the only one. We all remember how they weren't in a hurry to modernize the digital clock from the 90s microwave, which lasted a quarter of a century in the car, simply because it worked. That's how Toyota is, and Lexus too. So let's see how the Japanese did with Lexus's most important debut this year. And if you're new to my channel, my name is Zakharov. Let's get started. I think it's worth emphasizing that the previous ES was doing very well in Poland. And what's most interesting is that its sales peaked last year when it was naturally the oldest. Why is that? Well, you could jokingly say that when people saw the new ES, they got so scared of this completely new concept coming up that they rushed en masse to the dealerships while they could still buy the old good one. However, the truth is completely different. Lexus managed the prices, kept making better and better offers, and did it very effectively. Almost 2,000 ES units sold last year. That number speaks for itself. So the new concept didn't scare anyone. I'll say more. Lexus has already collected over 700 orders for this car from customers who haven't even seen it in person. Because the first electric units will arrive in Poland in June and the hybrid ones only in September. And then this car will have to live up to that trust. This car has several strengths, but this one is the most visible. Since the fight with the S-Class and the 7 Series wasn't going so well for the LS, the Japanese made a brilliant move. They withdrew the LS and extended the ES by 16.5 cm. Officially, it's still a competitor to the E-Class or the 5 Series, but in terms of size, it's in a completely different league. By the way, during the presentation, Lexus representatives themselves said that this car edges into F-segment territory. Another way to draw attention is the rear of the body. Look, the profile slopes down smoothly like a liftback, just like the Audi A7 style. And meanwhile, surprise, when you open the trunk, you see that we're dealing with a sedan. That makes sense, since this car was never meant for moving houses anyway, right? However, reinforcing a much larger opening would cost a lot of extra kilograms of steel and would kill the quietness in the cabin, and that leaves us with the front. Listen, it might not convince conservatives because there's no classic big grille here, but what we see here is pure physics. Designing a single body for both a fully electric and a hybrid version is an aerodynamic nightmare. An electric car needs exactly this kind of smooth, closed surface, while a hybrid, of course, needs oxygen. The solution is, well, a similar front with differences where air needs to be supplied without disturbing the airflow or the cash flow, because having similar fronts in every engine version means millions of dollars saved in production. In Poland, the hybrid will obviously be key. The 300h version, which is the only one available in Europe, is a 6th generation hybrid, and this is the first model on the market with such a hybrid. Yes, the first one. I mean, the RAV4 doesn't count because it's a 6th generation plug-in hybrid, which is a different animal. Of course, the pieces of the puzzle here are familiar. Yes, a 2.5-liter gasoline engine eCVT transmission, but the power might be surprising. Only 201 horsepower, but even though the predecessor was more powerful, this one is almost a second faster. For the first time, there's also an AWD version with a 55 horsepower motor at the rear, and interestingly, still the same declared power of 201 horsepower, which shaves another 0.3 seconds off the sprint to 100. There are also 2 electric versions. The ES350e has front-wheel drive with 224 horsepower, a 77 kW gross battery, and accelerates to 100 just like the weaker hybrid in 8 seconds. There's also the 500e version with all-wheel drive, which has 343 horsepower. Interestingly, it has a smaller battery because another motor had to fit in the back. It has 75 kW gross. Both versions charge at a maximum power of around 150 kW. At this point you might ask, but how is that possible? A weaker car, a heavier car, a bigger car, and at the same time, a faster car? Well, the question is, what do we mean by faster? Because when it comes to Vmax, the faster one will be the one with more power, because to put it simply, it's the maximum power that determines the top speed. However, how efficiently we accelerate to 100 is really a function of how much torque reaches the wheels and how quickly. And that's directly determined by torque. The electric motor here now has 270 Nm. Previously, it had just over 200, so the difference is significant. And that's the answer to the question. Yes, of course, this is a car that has less maximum power, but the low-end torque is better. And that translates into a better sprint to 100. Inside, the generational leap is huge. We have the largest screen in Lexus history, a 14-inch display, a screen with a completely new system, a system that really works very efficiently, very quickly, and looks very nice. The screen is 12.3 inches. It has the right shape, so the steering wheel doesn't block this screen. And that's something you can really appreciate after just a moment spent in the car. As for other changes, well, now we have the Lexus lettering here. That's the trend lately. People are now writing the name instead of displaying the logo. We can't forget to mention this strip, which simply disappears when you turn off the car, which I'll do now. You can see that all these buttons have disappeared. And now I start the engine again and the buttons come back. Each of these buttons is under a rubberized layer, which you can feel even before you press it. And when you click it, it's absolutely a physical button. But notice that there are more physical buttons here than just the absolute minimum that is proudly displayed here. Here, for example, we have the seat memory controls, or setting the seat memory. We also have the most important buttons here under your right hand. A full set on the door. This is how you open the door. You press it, it opens, and once I open it, I'll also show the buttons for controlling the seats. Or buttons like these, which are indeed under one common panel, but every press on this panel still feels fully physical. So you can put in a big screen, make a nice system on it, and at the same time not go all out when it comes to moving functionality to the screen. And just a few more seconds for the multimedia system. This is actually a connection with the phone. We also have our own internal navigation here. The navigation works very smoothly. We can go to the settings. There are a lot of these settings. There's a very useful search function. We don't have to look through the options. We just type in, I don't know, night, if that's what we're interested in. And we have lights, traffic lights, daytime running lights, and so on. Set the navigation to the White House.
The White House on Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest is about 1 day, 14 hours, and 55 minutes away.
I need to call my PR colleague and tell him I'll be a bit late. We have 2 cup holders here. Here we have a spot for a phone, 2 USB-C ports. There's another spot for a phone here, this time for charging the phone. Here it opens this way, or the other way too. Here we have a 12-volt outlet and USB-C ports. Below there's a compartment in a sort of small storage area. The door pockets aren't very spacious, because they're limited here at the top. Anyway, we happen to have a bottle right here, so something small like this fits in, of course. But I suppose that turning a large bottle in there won't be so easy. Besides that, on the right side, we have a glove compartment. I'd call it a small glove box. On the top, however, I don't see a sunglasses compartment, which is a pity. This bends by quite a few millimeters. Here we have nice velour. And lower down, we move to the next layer, which is also soft to the touch, and it bends. Although in this spot, even though the color is identical, it's already hard. This part on the door is also hard. Although I exaggerated, it bends a little under my finger. No, it's not hard. It bends a little under my finger. But then we move on to the soft part. This is exactly where we rest our elbow. And here it has to be soft. And it is. It's soft, really soft. As we move further, it gets even softer, softer. And the left side checks out too. You can press it really deep, and that's comfortable. On the right side, it's the same. Besides, it's still soft here. And it's even soft on the steering column, where if you get a bit closer to your knee here, you still have a comfortable finish. And when it comes to tugging on it, it's classic Toyota or Lexus. There's a bit of movement, but everything happens in complete silence. Here somewhere, well, nothing is happening here anymore. Here too, a gentle movement in silence. You can't easily yank the screen off. Check out the size of this screen's bezel, interesting. Let's move on. Silence, 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 and silence. And everywhere there's just a slight bit of movement, and everywhere there's just a slight bit of movement. The place I managed to feel out is this decorative strip, which, when you press it for the first time, it settles in and then it creaks. But you can't repeat it, because once it settles in, it doesn't creak anymore. So I won't show you. Unless you heard something, that's it. The standard audio system has 10 speakers. The seats are also ventilated and heated as standard and electrically adjustable. The steering wheel is heated as well. The seats have been completely redesigned. Look how slim they are. This also gives extra centimeters for the person sitting in the back, although there's already plenty of space there. Pay attention to this upper part, which is widened and also provides extra support. We also have side supports, which are soft and comfortable. You can see that it will look nice and serve its purpose, but it will never be too sporty. And going back to the equipment, to get Mark Levinson, or for example the head-up display, or the 360-degree camera system, we have to buy the Multimedia package for $15,000, which, and I'll talk about this more, is currently only available for hybrid versions of the car. It's also worth showing one more gadget here, namely the screen inside the mirror. I think I've seen this kind of screen in the RAV4 before. I think the resolution of this image here is higher. I might be wrong, but that's the impression I get. To finish describing the interior, I'll add that the interior can be white or black, or in this coffee with milk color, or I don't know, hazel. That's what it's called at Lexus, and since you're already looking at me, I'll also show you my situation in the front as a 2-meter tall guy. So, there's still some headroom left. And as for the steering wheel, I can still move closer, closer, and even closer. Oh, only now am I touching the console, so there's a lot of space left. The steering wheel is adjusted electrically, and the result is that I'm sitting exactly as I should. But of course, the biggest features are waiting for us in the back. And here are the promised features. The seat behind me is in the position set for a 2-meter tall person, and here is the 2-meter tall person who still has about 20 centimeters of space left. If we look at this car in terms of absolute height, it's over 10 centimeters taller. And indeed, getting in and out of it is comfortable. You don't have to go all the way down to the ground. The seat is right there. You just have to bend down a little and you're in. So in this respect, the need to adapt the design for the battery layer in the floor actually turned out well. And maybe significantly lengthening this car was partly an answer to the question of how to avoid throwing off its proportions since the car became taller. And coming back to the 2-meter tall person test, we have one pocket, another pocket, here we have air vents, and here we have USB ports. Here it's kind of smooth. I thought I'd find something, but no. We have identical pockets in the back as in the front. Lights on the top, ski pass-through. Unfortunately, in this model, that means you can't fold the seats. We have a comfortable armrest, and there's a little pocket here, sort of. In higher versions not yet available in Poland, there will also be a screen. In the better equipped versions, there's also a sunshade here, and I'll show you something that surprised me. This kind of center tunnel. And I'm wondering why it's needed, because in the all-wheel drive version, it's just an electric motor anyway, so there's no need for any drive shaft to spin here. So most likely it was simply about the rigidity of the body. I'm actually driving the hybrid version, the American hybrid, which is the slightly more powerful one, so I won't be speaking here in a direct like-for-like comparison, how the Polish version will accelerate or the European one. But first of all, let's speed it up to a solid 65 miles per hour, because that's the maximum speed on this stretch. And keep in mind, we're driving on American concrete pavement. We have a very noisy surface here, and I've already had the chance to hear how loud it gets in different cars in the various taxis we've ridden in before. Today I'm switching to the ES, and suddenly this surface isn't that noisy at all. I'm not saying it was silent, but it wasn't loud here. You only hear the engine when you press it, when it revs up, and even then it's a lower, bassy, pleasant tone, so the engine is well soundproofed. It has always been the case here, and the Japanese claim that starting it in this car isn't so abrupt either. It's a gentle process, so whether we're driving in normal mode or switch to sport, it won't jerk us around. So for me, the move towards the LS wasn't just about the size, but also about that smoothness of movement characteristic of cars from the F segment. Here, the rear suspension has also been modified. It's a multi-link setup, which isn't a dramatic change since it already had a multi-link suspension before. Anyway, when it comes to handling bumps, all the standard bumps, potholes, and manholes were dealt with by this car in such a way that if the LS did it like that, I wouldn't question it at all. And the ES does it exactly the same way. Boom, boom, another manhole, just the same. Another topic I just have to mention is that you sit a bit higher than in the previous ES. And even though you can't see it from the outside, visually this car hides that effect very effectively with its proportions. Still, when we're sitting inside, it's halfway to something we'd already start calling a crossover. Even though we're sitting in a sedan, we're not sitting right above the asphalt, and yet we see more. I didn't check how much 50 kilometers per hour is in miles per hour, so at 32 the road is completely empty. Super quick steering response. Here, the amount of steering assist varies and clearly adapts to the situation on the road. Because what happened here was that I turned the steering wheel without much effort, and the wheels turned as far as they'd go. And there was a lot of tire squealing, as you heard, but firstly, the car didn't lean too much, and secondly, there was no reaction from the electronics. We performed this maneuver as intended, and that's probably what it's all about. The intensity of the experience came from the fact that this car didn't react lazily, but instead adapted to my expectations. I'm driving in sport mode, which is why the wheels turned that way. I should also mention fuel consumption. Here I have 44.8 miles per gallon, so someone should translate that for me, but I'm guessing that's somewhere around 6.5. It's not far from what the manufacturer claims, considering that here I'm driving while testing it, accelerating, braking, and so on. So I think the hybrid does a good job. Now I have a chance to do a standing start in sport mode. I wouldn't say it was some huge shove in the back, but it was definitely a very controlled launch. When it comes to traction, because those same tires that were squealing a moment ago didn't make a sound this time. And now, getting onto the highway, you can listen again. I'll floor it. It doesn't sound bad. Now, at this highway speed, you can also appreciate the changes that have taken place here. When it comes to the soundproofing of the interior, because actually you can barely hear any wind noise at all. And that's a matter of both the windows and the redesigned pillars, as well as little details like, for example, the wipers, which have been hidden below the hood line, a hood that has also been redesigned so that the airflow passes around the car in the quietest way possible. I'm already heading to the hotel. I literally have a minute to sum up, and I would say this. This turned out to be a car that's not focused solely on the numbers. Yes, so there are fewer decibels but more Newton meters but fewer horsepower, so the price is lower because then the potential emission penalty is also lower, but more of something else that's good but less of something else that's bad. It's not a matter of quantity. A totally new car was introduced. In their presentation, they highlighted the previous ES's legacy and the importance of adopting key elements, which I believe they accomplished. However, from the driver's point of view, this change is very noticeable. We sit higher and drive a very long car with a larger, much larger wheelbase, a car that is quieter, a car that is more flexible, lighter, easier to drive, really moving towards that F segment, and one that I would gladly get into a second time. And they will definitely do it in Poland. The end. I return to the hotel. Thank you for your attention. According to the catalog, the ES 300h FWD Prestige starts in Poland at 260,000, and for the AWD version, we pay about 13,000 more. For the multimedia package, which in my opinion is a must-have because it includes audio and a set of cameras, you need to pay an additional $15,000. The ES350e starts from $287,000. Meanwhile, the 500e is about $309,000, but as I mentioned, you can't buy extra equipment for the electric models like you can for the hybrid, for now. And now, to sum up. As with any major change, there will always be critics. And that's good, because they either point out the gap between expectations and what the new model offers, or they show a lack of understanding of the topic. It's easy to focus on the lower stated power and overlook that the car is actually faster. It's also easy to be surprised about where the better equipment is in electric cars. I asked them about it myself and I heard, not yet, again, they're not in a hurry. So I think it's best to evaluate the results of their actions without rushing as well. So I'm leaving you with this video as a first leisurely look in California, and I'm already inviting you today for a properly unhurried test, because I'll definitely do one like that in Poland. The electric ES models will be available in Poland starting in June, but you'll have to wait until September for the hybrids again. Well, they're not in a hurry. Please also write your thoughts about the new Lexus ES in the comments, taking your time. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to subscribe and see you in future videos. Bye.